Hello students, today's lecture is on allegory. I am Dr. Neelofar Kohri, and allegory, which can be known as a metaphor or as a symbol, it has a power of both a metaphor and a narrative, and it's a very favorite term of all the poets, especially. Now let's move to the definition. Allegory is a figure of speech in which abstract ideas and principles are described in terms of characters, figures, and events. It can be employed in prose and poetry to tell a story with the purpose of teaching or explaining an idea or a principle. The objective of its use is to teach some kind of moral lesson. So, abstract ideas and principles are described in terms of characters, figures, and events. Ideas are represented in ways of character, figure, and events, and it can be applied in prose and poetry both. And main object of elegy is to teach, to explain, okay, and to teach some kind of moral lesson. Allegories can be understood to be a type of extended metaphor. An extended metaphor develops a certain analogy to a greater extent than a simple comparison. An allegory, meanwhile, uses a particular metaphor throughout an entire plot. Okay, the metaphor goes through the entire plot. For example, the theme of Mahabharata is taken to write some novel or to make some drama or movie. So that symbol or that metaphor is Mahabharata, and the whole story which is based on it is an allegory of this. The word allegory comes from the ancient Greek to speak or so as to imply something other. The definition of allegory makes sense coming from this term, as an allegory always has some hidden meaning below the surface. Okay, meaning it is derived from the Greek, and the meaning is to speak so as to simply something, so as to imply something other. When you are speaking as if of someone else, something else. So this definition, which says that it is a figure of speech that presents a rhetorical or a metaphor to describe abstract ideas, to describe the uh, events. So, the definition of allegory makes sense coming from this term, as an allegory always has some hidden meaning below the surface meaning. That is the special feature or characteristics of allegory, that it has the hidden meaning below the surface meaning. So, now let's move to the examples of the term. The common examples in day-to-day life or in day-to-day stories, like in moral stories, we have allegory. There are many common stories that we tell which have allegorical meanings. These are especially popular in stories for children, as allegories often mean to teach some lesson or help the audience understand complex ideas and concepts. Stories such as Asobs fables often have morals and thus are examples of allegory. We also use real events that have happened to teach lessons. Here are some stories that have entered into public consciousness that are also allegories. Okay, so the stories which teach us some morality, which have ideas. So they use allegories to simplify the complex ideas and concepts. The tortoise and the hare from Aesop's fable, okay, is a very famous example of allegory. We have all read the story in our childhood, the story of hare and tortoise. So we learned that strong and steady win the race. Okay, and tortoise and hare are used as examples or metaphors to simplify the idea of the story writer. Then the story of Icarus. He fashions wings for himself out of wax, but when he flies too close to the sun, his wings melt. So this story is message about the dangers of reaching beyond our powers. We should not try to move beyond our powers, beyond the circumference which is decided for us. Then Yertle the Turtle by Dr. Sears. This story about a turtle who yearns for too much power is actually an allegory about Adolf Hitler and the evils of totalitarianism. Okay, then the Hunger Games, this trilogy of young adult books and new blockbuster movies, is an allegory for our obsession with reality television and how it numbs us to reality. So these are the stories from day to day life which are examples of allegory, because by the help of some metaphor, like the help of the metaphor of the hare and tortoise in the Asobs fable, in the Icarus story, the fashion creating the fashionable wings of wax for himself, which takes him too close to the sun, and his wings start melting. Then Yertle the Turtle, which is story about a turtle who thinks of so much power which is beyond his limits again, and this is the story of Adolf Hitler and the Hunger Game trilogy. So these are the examples from day to day life. Now let's move to the allegory in literature. Allegory is very significant in literature also. Allegories have been used for centuries in many different cultures. They are used to teach lessons, explain moral concepts, and show the author's views on a certain situation. An allegory is very specific type of story, as it must say true to its message to the masses for the entirety of the story. Allegories thus can be difficult to master, as they can be pedantic when done poorly. However, some works of literature can be read allegorically, gain much strength from their deeper meaning. So, the one who writes an allegory should be a master in writing, otherwise it will be a pedantic kind of story, and it would not be that interesting, and it would not gain that strength or that lesson which it wants to depart. So the example, the very famous example, is George Orwell's Animal Farm. The whole novel is written in allegorical form. There is an example from this novel. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourself, but sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades, and then where should we be? So, this is the most famous allegory example. Orwell's story is a story of a farm in which the animals kick out the humans to become equal workers, and the rise of the pig comrade Napoleon to quash any possibility of equality mirrors the Russian Revolution of 1917 very closely. Comrade Napoleon is a symbol for Stalin, while other prominent pigs in the story represent Lenin and Trotsky. This work was Orwell's first conscious attempt to fuse political purpose and artistic purpose into one whole. Next example is from The Lord of Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, again a very famous example of allegory. As the power grows, its proved friends will also grow. And the wise, such as you and I, may with patience come at last to direct its courses, to control it. We can bide our time, we can keep our thoughts in our hearts, deploring maybe evils done by the way, but approving the high and ultimate purpose, knowledge, rule, order, all the things that we have so far striven in vain to accomplish, hindered rather than helped by our weak or idle friends, there would not be any real change in our decisions, only in our means. So Tolkien insisted that he did not write his Lord of Rings trilogy as an allegory of good and evil, yet it is very easy to read the series that way, although he rejects the idea. There are clear symbols of good and evil, many of which seem to relate closely to the characters and scope of World War II. Tolkien also shows how evil can corrupt good. The most obvious example is of this is Frodo, who only intends to do good, and the One Ring, the encompassing evil, of which starts to change Frodo's nature Power leads to evil in Tolkien's account, and in the above excerpt, we see the wizard Saruman explaining his vision to Gandalf. Saruman has been corrupted by power and wants Gandalf to join his side. So, again, if we will read the whole story, it is a story of good and evil, and good and evil are being symbolized by these characters, Frodo and Frodo, Gandalf, and Saruman. So these are the examples from Lord of the Rings. So this is all allegory is all about. We all know metaphor, we all know similes, we all know comparisons, we all know symbols. So we can say these are the symbols which are used at length, or the stories or metaphors which are used in the form of figures and characters and all, to extend the whole work. And the intention of the author is to provide some moral lesson, some moral teaching to the readers. That it is intention of the author in the allegory. So I hope allegory is clear to us, clear to all of you now, and there are many more examples in literature as well as in real life. So if you go through any such example of allegory, you can share it in the comment box. Okay, so thank you very much. See you again. Have a nice day.